Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, whether that be Florida, Kentucky, Arizona, California, Idaho, wherever it is, we just want to say welcome. Thank you for joining us. We spend a lot of time just prepping every week to be able to share these messages. And so we think it's really important to take this Bible, this compilation of poems and stories and messages from kings, all of it, deep metaphor. We believe it's so important to take it responsibly by asking deeper questions, right? Who wrote it? Who is the audience? What do these words actually mean? We don't want to pull customs and rituals from our time, doctrines from our time, our era. We want to understand theirs first, so that then we can pull deeper meaning here. And so all these books behind me, we spend hours delving into these books, which are all filled with these rabbinical interpretations, right? The actual Jewish people who were experts on it. We look at that first. We want to make sure we understand how they wrote, what they thought about the text before we insert our interpretation. And so after we spend time with it, then we ask, how is it relevant to us today? And so this is what we do every single week. And so we're so thrilled to have you join us one more time here at Ethos Online. And so moving through it, we have been delving into the book of Genesis for over a year, well over a year. And we're only on chapter 32 today, right? Because we understand most Jewish rabbis, when they move through this book, Genesis, this compilation, it takes years. Literally, the last time I studied this with a good friend of mine, he's now a Jewish rabbi, we took over 2 years studying in depth. And so I want to be able to share that with you, what that looks like when you really take a text responsibly. And so Genesis is not a history book. It's not how the Jewish people understood it. Genesis was a compilation that was compiled as part of Torah, which was Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so all of these stories, all of the poems, all of this is all compiled in 587 BC when their temple's destroyed and they're marched hundreds of miles on foot to Babylon. And so Babylon is the empire, right? It is the largest empire. It is the empire that just, it consumes smaller tribes. And when it consumes your tribe, the idea is you're going to assimilate. You're going to take on their traditions, their rituals, their songs, their gods. But Israel is going to be different. Israel says, we're not going to comply. We are not going to take on your gods. We are not going to, the word is assimilate, right? And so the way that they are able to keep their traditions, their rituals, the way they're able to stay monotheistic is that, of course, they compile all these stories. They compile what we know as Torah. And so every time they picked up this beautiful scroll, and a rabbi would sit much like I'm sitting here, they would share these messages, and these people would see themselves in the text. And so whenever you read about Moses, Abraham, Joshua, Yeshua, whenever you read about these individuals, these messianic archetypes, they always saw themselves in the story. And so when we can find Israel in the story, we can find ourselves there, right? So that's what we seek to do every week. And so Genesis chapter 32, 2 through 14. That's what we're going to delve into today. So, reminder, we have these two individuals who are kind of central to the story with Jacob. We have Jacob and we have Esau. And so if you're a Jewish person, you understood these two characters in an interesting way. One that I would argue has kind of been forgotten in Christianity today. We often associate like Jacob, he's a deceiving, he does some evil things to his poor brother who's kind of an imbecile, but the idea is much richer. Jacob is the one who dwells in the tents. That was the idea. And dwelling in the tent meant you were a scholar, which is what Jews, literally, this was what they felt was most important. You studied Torah. He was a Torah studier. And so he understood the promise, whereas his brother Esau did not. right? He was willing to trade away the blessings of Torah for soup, right? And so you have these two individuals who really are representing two things, the higher self and the lower self of Israel. And so this is why one of the great scholars of Judaism says the twins are really the beautiful light and the darkness that we Jews embody from day to day. Whichever side we feed is the side that will either waste the blessing of life or multiply it. Yeah, what a cool way of viewing the verse. So here we go. Let's delve in verses 2 through 14. We'll read together. Jacob went on his way, and angels of God met him. Jacob went when he saw them. This is the camp of God, and he named the place Mahanaim. Jacob sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esau to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, So shall you say to my master Esau, Thus said your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban, and I have tarried until now. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants and maidservants, and I have sent to tell them to my master to have favor in your eyes. The angels returned to Jacob, saying, We came to your brother, to Esau, and he is also coming to you, and 400 men are with him. Jacob became very frightened and was distressed. So he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into two camps. And he said, If Esau comes to one camp and strikes it down, the remaining camp will escape. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, Return to your land and to your birthplace, and I will do good to you. I have become small from all the kindness and from all the truth that you have rendered your servant. It's a mouthful. For with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him, lest he come and strike me and strike a mother with children. Right? The innocents. 13, and you said, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your seed as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of the multitude. So he lodged there on that night. And he came and he took from that and came into his hand a gift for his brother Esau. And we'll study the rest of that next week. But let's delve in. Here we go. Verse 2. Jacob went on his way, and angels of God met him. Now, when I was growing up, angels, I always had the picture of like a Ken doll, right? With these big flowing eagle wings. Huge, right? Many of us, we got that image, and the idea was, why don't we see these angels anymore? Why aren't they just showing up, right? We have this idea that they're kind of all around us. They're in this other dimension, right? But angels, according to Judaism, meant something way more interesting in my opinion. And let me just share with you what one rabbi says about angels. Angels are sometimes holy messengers, deliverers, representatives, but almost always they are the human representative of the divine. Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and you and me are called to be the deliverers of the kingdom come, the divine kingdom come. I really like this. What this does is it removes this idea of angels from this like weird cosmic, weird dimensional kind of thing, right? This eerie kind of like, where are they? They were my show. Where are they? It becomes this thing where it places on man's shoulders the responsibility of representing the divine. It's a really beautiful picture. And so when I think about where are the angels today, well, I see them in many different ways. I see them, they're the firefighters, right? They're the policemen. They are the teachers. They're the children playing around with us, right? They're the coworker that's helping us through a difficult time. It's the neighbor that comes over in the time of need, right? Those are the moments when we see the angels, the divine show up. These glimpses of the divine are everywhere. And they are in those people, and you and I are often those people to them too, right? It's beautiful. The divine is all around us. You just have to open your eyes and you'll see it. Angels are around us, right? I like this quote from Mr. Rogers. It's probably my favorite of his quotes, and I think he nails it. This is what the angels were, right? When I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. The helpers, the angels, right? Yes, they are among us. They're the ones who are doing the good in the world, the ones that are sharing the blessing, the ones that are representing the divine. They are there, they are present. So good, right? Let's keep going. Verse 3, and Jacob said, when he saw the camp of God, he named the place Mahanaim. Now, of course, you know me. We're going to look at every word. We're going to look at every phrase. What does it mean? Mahanaim, it means the place of two camps, two different ways. And so, yes, we could say this is foreshadowing, right? Because Jacob is going to soon break his camp into two. But there is, of course, a rabbinical interpretation that I wanted to share. It's one that I think is kind of palatable, interesting. I think you'll like it. Jacob is given two messages. From two messages, life brings a curse and a blessing. It is here that Jacob accepts the deepest of life lessons. Once he can accept the pain, he can then accept the blessing. I really enjoy this text. Israel is learning this very lesson, right? In the middle of captivity, in the middle of brokenness, there's obviously curses that come. This is a tribe of people who over and over again, they get the shaft, right? But he's saying when we learn to walk with the pain, it's then that we also learn to walk with the good. It's the good, the bad, the ugly. It's walking with life and death. And so the two camps are really this really beautiful, according to many rabbis, this beautiful picture of Jacob accepting either. They could go either way, but I'm going to have two camps. I'm going to live in both places. It's really a kind of cool idea. And yes, of course, it could be kind of both of these ideas of Judah and Israel. But again, these symbolic, metaphorical ones, these interpretations are so good, so worth sharing. Let me keep going. Verse 4, Jacob sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esau. So the message here, the message to his angry brother is that he has grown, right? He's sending this message, I've matured, right? I have moved through some things, right? My camp has grown, my people have grown. We are a large group of people, and we have matured. We've grown. I'm not the same person you knew before, right? This idea, yes, there's going to be conflict, but I'm sending ahead of me peaceful messengers, messages of the divine, glimpses of the divine, so that when our families finally come together, we can experience the fullness of the divine. See it? The representatives, the glimpses go ahead. And when he sees those glimpses, when he finally experiences family again, the reuniting of them, he'll see the fullness of God. It's a really beautiful picture, especially for a divided nation. Jacob sends Esau the message that he's learned to walk the way of the divine. He wants peace. He wants restoration. So verse 4, he sends him ahead to his brother Esau, and to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. This is a funny word. I just wanted to share this with you. Not a lot of deep meaning, but this word Seir, kind of funny. It actually means the hairy, shaggy place. Right? So this is why, again, when I read these stories, I remember their stories, right? Where would Esau live? Hairy, imbecile, caveman Esau, kind of the joke of Esau. Well, Esau is going to live in a hairy, shaggy place covered with trees, right? Of course it's going to be. So again, when you're reading this as a Jewish person, there's so much humor and satire and imagery that we just missed today. And so I thought I'd share that as well. Go on to verse 6. And I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants, and maidservants, and I have sent to tell this to my master to find favor in your eyes. So, is Jacob bragging here? Is Jacob trying to impress his brother here? Short answer, no. Longer answer, there's something deeper going on. So here's what's going on. He's telling his brother the blessings of God have continued following him. right? He claimed the promise, he claimed the birthright, and it's continued. So it's less about bragging and more about sharing his people, his family. He wants Esau to be a part of this. He wants Esau to join the party. Do you see it? He says, Esau, I want to invite you into community. I want to grow our family. It's a really beautiful picture. And the question, of course, is Esau, are you going to accept me back home or not? Are you going to accept me after this long journey? Are we going to become one again? Or are you going to stand at a distance? And for many of you, you're already picking up on the connection, right? When Jesus told this story, you must understand this. When Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son, it's so interesting to me because most Jewish people I know, when they read the prodigal story, most of them make the connection immediately. They will say this. They'll say, oh, Jacob and Esau, right? For us today, we rarely ever make the connection. Jesus is retelling the story of Jacob and Esau, and he's turned it into a more elaborate story, right? It's a beautiful metaphor, but it's really a story that's been told before. It's the story of Jacob and Esau. And so watch what happens though when Jesus' story, right? When the prodigal comes back, right? When the prodigal who has claimed the blessing comes back, right? The question is, does the brother accept him or not? Well, unfortunately, the brother chooses to stand at a distance, right? The brother chooses not to participate in the party. The eldest son chooses to stand at a distance. And so the question in this story, of course, is going to be, is Esau going to join the celebration of Jacob coming home, or will he stand at a distance and not join the celebration? Will he literally push off community? Will he push off the idea of tikkun olam, right? Restoration, shalom, nothing missing, nothing broken. Will he continue fighting against it, cheapen the blessing, or will he finally say, no, this is it? This is life when community comes together, when family finally comes together. Will he get it or not? And that's what has everyone, these Jewish readers, they're hanging on the edge of their seat. They're so excited to see, will Esau accept Jacob back home or not? Will he participate in the celebration? Yeah, so good. So verses 7 and 8. The angels returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother, to Esau. He's also coming toward you, and 400 men are with him. 400 men, right? That's like a military. These are segments of military. This would have seemed like a militaristic. Esau is coming to fight. And that's what this would have said in those ancient times, those tribal times. He has paired off his family, his tribe, and they're going to war. That's what this looks like, feels like. So Jacob became very frightened and was distressed. So he divided the people who were with him and flocks and cattle and camels into two camps. So Jacob begins to assume the worst, like I think many of us did. But an interesting twist from one rabbi says this: when facing our brothers who have turned enemies, we must assume the best, but prepare for the worst. I love this idea when considering these two brothers. What an interesting idea when you consider conflict with people, right? Maybe the idea here is that when I assume the best, I walk into conversation or even conflict, I can walk into it hopeful rather than like this intent to hurt or be defensive. Yeah, think about that one for a minute. Yes, prepare, but man, the idea of hoping for the best, it's really pretty beautiful. And so imagine again those two kingdoms, the north and the south, Judah, right? You have these two kingdoms in Israel, and they're pairing off. And what if the two assume the best rather than the worst? Right? You may not have violence. You might have a really good conversation. You might even have a party. Yeah, this is how they are viewing this story, and I think it's so beautiful. So good. Verse 9, if Esau comes to one camp and strikes it down, the remaining camps will escape. And so, worst case scenario, if this life is taken, the tribe's going to survive, right? But also interesting historical connection again, Judah and Israel. We can keep peace. We hope for the best. The two kingdoms are separated, right? This again, so many little connections to what happened to Israel and Judah. Verse 11, I have become small from all the kindness and from all the truth that you have rendered your servant. For with my staff I crossed the Jordan. Think about so many of the stories, right? The story is retold where the messianic archetype crosses the Jordan. And with their staff, what do? Yeah, it separates, right? The waters part. Over and over again, you have that messianic archetype. And so Jacob, right? You have Elijah, Elisha. You have Jesus walking into this river, right? And he, again, the sea, the water doesn't part, but the heavens part, right? The firmament where the water's above. The idea over and over again is a really rich one. When you cross the river, it was always the deepest part of the journey. And this is why one rabbi says crossing the Jordan is the baptismal moment when Israel leaves the past pains behind and walks into the new life before them. And so after experiencing all the birth pains of a new nation, after being in captivity, right, under Laban, after working tirelessly like a slave, finally, his people are freed and they wander. And now it says they move through the Jordan. It's such a beautiful picture. Any Israelite reading this recounts their own journey. They recount the stories of Egypt. It's all there. You must cross the Jordan. You must be baptized, right? The idea, you step into the water and you come out new. That's the idea. Jacob is a very different man than when he first left Esau. So good. And Israel, when they leave Egypt, Babylon, when they leave any of these empires they were under, after they wander for a time, they come out a very different people, right? A restored people, a changed people, a better people. That's the idea. So good. Verse 12, now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I'm afraid of him, lest he come and strike me and strike a mother and a child. He kind of brings up this idea of justice, right? He might even be unjust with the way he treats us, even as enemies. And so he asks, though, notice this, he asks for deliverance. The story of Egypt replayed over, right? Peace, restoration, to come between him and his people, have the divine hand of God take place. This is the calling out moment, right? The Israelites call out to their God, and their God responds over and over again. And this is the same in the story of Jacob. Will the divine answer the call? And the response is always yes in these stories, isn't it? The divine will answer. Verse 13, and he claims the promise here, right? You promised me, right? You will make your seed as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of the multitude. Again, sound familiar? It is. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It's the same promise over and over again. And so Israel continues to hold firm to the promise that they're gonna make it through. God is going to provide. And so when I think of Jewish history, I think of the Holocaust. Like, these people are the most resilient people on earth. There's so much we can learn from them, right? They survive the Holocaust. They survive Babylonian captivity, Roman captivity. They survive Egyptian captivity. They have survived. They are survivors. Recently, in their own place, Israel, they've been the Orthodox Jews. They have been kind of pushed toward the forced vaccinations. It's been interesting. These people, over and over again, they get the shaft, and yet they find ways to survive. They find ways to be resilient in the face of brokenness and pain and injustice. These people don't give up. And the question, of course, for many of us is, how do they hold on? And the answer, according to them, in all of their writing, is that they trust the promise that their people will make it through again and again. And that right now in Israel, there are so many laments, so many stories of people feeling the pain and the brokenness, their freedoms removed. They are writing stories right now. But their stories mirror so many of the stories of the past. They hold on to hope. It's what it looks like to be an Israelite, to be a Hebrew, to be a Jew. You hold on to hope. And so in verse 14, it says, "So he lodged there on that night." He lodged, he camped, he remained in the state of hope. And I really, really appreciated this last rabbinical quote here that I wanted to share. Jacob lodges in a deeper state of hopefulness in the promise that the divine has given our people. It is not enough to believe, we must sit fully and rest in the hope of a better tomorrow. So good. We must rest in the hope of a better tomorrow. We have to lodge there. We have to prepare to sit there a bit. We need to prepare to have hope again. So beautiful. So that was 13 verses, really. And usually those are skipped over because we want to get to Jacob wrestling with God. But this pre-story is just as good, right? There's so much texture and beauty to this. And so I started wondering, what do we do to take it home today? For me, I really pulled this idea of Jacob is trying to restore relationship with Esau, right? The relationship has been severed. Judah, Israel, right? The kingdoms, they've been severed. There is conflict between the two. And so how does one restore a broken relationship? This is so difficult, right? And so I started reading through some of my old favorite books on these topics. And one of them kind of surprised me. It comes from a couple different pastors that I just haven't read much from lately. And so I picked it up again and I thought, this is really good stuff, and I'm going to share it from their perspective. And so, number one, how to restore a broken relationship. Number one, talk to God before talking to the person. Now, again, I don't know what this looks like for you, right? It might be prayer, might be talking aloud, it might be just meditating on the person and thinking good things for them, taking time to deeply consider the conversation. That is so vital when I think about this. It stops us from, like, in the heat of the moment saying something we're going to regret, because we just take time to consider the person that we're going to talk to. It's so good. Number two, take the initiative. I like this one. Sometimes the other person might just be waiting for us. It's awkward, right? But taking the initiative, you become the problem solver. Because sometimes not both parties don't want to take initiative. We in this culture right now, we like to sit back and let other people do the thing. Well, then do the thing. Be the initiator. Do it with grace, mercy, and love. Right? Step forward, initiate the conversation. Number three, sympathize with their feelings. This one's not very easy for me sometimes. Keep your heart open, right? Be able to see their perspective. I think once you do that, you might even have some empathy for them. You might sympathize, understand. It might even grow into empathy where you actually feel the thing, right? That's the hope. Number four, I like this one a lot. Attack the problem, not the person. And I think this is so easy for me to forget, and I have a feeling you too. The problem is the problem, right? Not the person. The problem is the problem. Look at the problem, right? Don't demonize the person. Look at the problem. And then number five, emphasize reconciliation, not resolution. Resolution is resolving the problem, right? Reconciliation is about the relationship. Focus on the relationship. Focus on how you're going to bring the friendship back into a better state, a healthier state. Once the friendship is brought into a healthier state, the problem is easier to resolve. And so when we can remember this is a friendship, right? This is a family member. This is whatever the thing is. Focus on that first. I thought, oh, that's a good point. Because sometimes they become the enemy, right? They're not the enemy. But in my mind, I can create this drama, this combative nature. But the reality is that they're family. Let's reconcile first. Let's reconcile, and resolution will follow. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this today. This was so much fun for me. There's always like so many really cool little jewels in there that are just dying to be pulled out. And so today, thank you for joining me. And as always, please consider going to ethos-church.org/donate. We are a tax-deductible donation. We're an organization that we thrive and we function on those donations. So please consider giving there. We really do appreciate when you journey with us with not just your finances, but also hit that subscribe button, sharing it with others. We love journeying with you through these texts. And as we continue moving through, please consider going to Ethos Living Rooms, where again we have online conversations live about all of these kind of subjects. We'll read through the scripture, we'll talk, we'll sometimes have back and forth. It's so much fun. Please consider that, and as well, hit that subscribe button. Right? Smash that subscribe button, share it with people. Let's continue growing all the different places that we share ideas. Not only just the podcast, the website, but also our YouTube channel as well. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week as we delve into more of chapter 32. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.